And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Don Hose, who had a near-death experience after falling through ice in a small frozen pond. Don, thank you for joining me and welcome.
A pleasure to be here with you today, Jeff.
Don, let's start on the day that you fell through the ice and go from there.
Sure. I was between 10 and 11 years old. This happened in Baltimore. Um, we had a pond in our backyard, on our property, at the end of the property in the back. It wasn't that big, and the water was probably no more than 3 or 4 feet deep. But I'm that age, and I saw the ice, and I'm thinking, okay, I can go out here and walk on it. Uh, and I did. And I even started to jump on it a little bit. And by the time I heard the cracking, it was too late to move, and I went through. And the thing is, it wasn't a huge river or the current could have taken me away or I went under. I went under briefly, but the shock was the cold to my body, and I had winter clothes on. It was just, like probably going into a deep freezer of some sort. If you could, I'm thinking like now that I know and understand temperature is a little bit like you just, you see people up in Minnesota and places like that, they'll take a cup of water and they can throw it out the window and it just freezes instantly. Well, that's how I'm trying to give you a description of how I felt. And so I'm sure that I went either unconscious or out of body consciousness. It doesn't really matter because I began to experience light. And now I know that I was experiencing this through my third eye. Uh, Gives you a higher vibrational vision. And I noticed a pink color. I talk about it a lot. And then I noticed white. So I had pink and white going back and forth. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was bathing in this light. So instead of bathing in water, freezing water, I'm experiencing this very warm bath of light. It's a radiant pink white light. And all of a sudden, I wasn't cold anymore. That's the thing. I was warm. Now, even at that age, I realized that I had fallen through ice and I was in water. It was that cold, but that's not what I was feeling. So I was experiencing warmth, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm starting to connect this with God in my mind. I was raised in the Episcopal Church as a Christian, and I really believed in God and Jesus and all that at that time. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like somehow God is saving me from freezing to death. That's all I could think. Um, and then the next thing I know, I don't recall how I got out of the water, but I was laying on my back on dirt in dirt, and all of a sudden I went from this very warm, fuzzy, warm, peaceful. It was incredibly peaceful, and it gave me even then I'm thinking, wow, there's some love here. There's a lot of love with this, but I don't really understand it. And so um, the next thing I know, I did start to feel cold again. I'm looking around, and then I want to get up and go in the house and get warm. That's all I could think of. And I actually remember running in the house and uh, taking off all my clothes and wrapped myself up in a towel, and I didn't even get a shower or anything. And I actually went and got in my mother's bed because nobody was there, and I just wanted to get warm again, get my body warm again, and that's pretty much it. It's a very simple near-death experience. A lot to it, and I've analyzed it many times, and now that I know more, I can interpret it from now, but that's the best I could do at the time.
Well, now that you've analyzed it, do you think that an angel helped you get out, or what do you think happened?
I would just say that my higher power did have something to do with it. That there, these things, experiences, even physical experiences like the eclipse that a lot of people experienced yesterday. Um, I didn't have a total eclipse here, but it was enough to see things get darker. I noticed a drop in temperature. I noticed all these things. And when this stuff happens to you, you say to yourself, there's something greater than me going on here. I don't understand it. I don't know exactly what that is. I don't I don't I don't interpret things with the angels. I do believe that there are powers greater than us. Uh, I think there's God, the power that's greater than us. But I also think that that power works through human beings, and some of us are more advanced than others. Some of us are much more conscious than others, and with consciousness increases power. So I would just say that some higher power helped me to survive that incident. I don't think I would have died. Um, I don't think it wasn't deep enough for that to happen. It's just that I could have gone into hypothermia, could have had a situation, but that didn't happen.
I know you were young, but how did that shape your spiritual and religious beliefs going forward?
Well, I would say within a couple of years, uh, I read the Bible a lot, and there were three or four verses in the Bible that always intrigued me to the point that I thought, well, I have questions, and I wasn't getting these questions in church. When I attended church service with my grandmother and even Bible study, the answers, or if I did get them, the answers weren't good enough for me. And I'll give you one of them. Matthew 6:22 says, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." Now, there's a lot of different interpretations of that today. And I had a friend that had a Bible collection. I was in my 20s when I saw this for the first time in my life, and he had probably 30 different Bibles. So, my point here is that translation, and then we're talking about translation from a person that spoke Aramaic but grew up in the Hebrew as a Jewish person and got into Judaism and when they were coming up and ended up teaching something entirely different. So that if thine eye be single, for me was the third eye. And the third eye thing always interested me. I'm fascinated by this third eye thing. So to be quick about it, that hunger for that kind of knowledge led me to see a picture one day of Jesus, and his eyes were very big. Now, this was a statuesque type of photograph, but the eyes is what got my attention. And I flipped it over, and I think I was about 12. It said, "If you meditate on me for 5 minutes a day, your life will change." And I'm thinking, wow, that's awesome. I didn't know anything about meditation. If you'd asked me what the word meant, I didn't know anything. But long story short, I started meditating. The first time I did it was for 7 minutes. And I did it based on a book I found called Om. I didn't know what Om meant, but that intrigued me as well. And there was an Indian person in there. He said, if you meditate on your back, laying down, you probably go to sleep. Well, I found that to be true. He said, if you sit up, and you don't have to sit in the lotus position, but you just want to sit up. So I trained myself to meditate for up to 2 hours a day by the time I was 16. And I sat up all the time, and I started having very similar experiences that I had when I fell through the ice. So I started to put the two together. Um, to me, there's no difference except one's involuntary. When you meditate and you have an OBE, it's a voluntary experience. When you have an accident that kicks you out of your body to have an experience, that's an involuntary experience. And I'm always asking people that have the near death experience, can you duplicate your experience? Because in out of body experience that I have in meditation, I can go do it anytime I want to. So that's something that happens at my will as opposed to an involuntary experience that that person has no control over because nobody's been able to tell me I can duplicate the experience.
Do you think that it's easier for you to duplicate the experience since you had already left your body accidentally previously?
I don't think it makes it any easier, but it helps me to relate better to the initial experience that I had. In other words, that I was able when I started seeing the same light in meditation in a voluntary way, I'm saying to myself, wow, this is the same light, the same peace, the same love that I was feeling in that experience. I'm able to feel it now, but anytime I want to and on my own.
While meditating, have you ever been out of your body, turned around, and saw it sitting there?
I have not had that experience when I was meditating. I did have it um, during an NDE experience that I had later in my life.
Would you like to share any of that?
Well, if I remember correctly, I was 19 and someone pulled a gun on me. And they basically pointed that gun right here. And if I turn sideways, I can show you how close that gun was to me. And so the fear at the moment evidently was enough to thrust me out of myself.
Right.
Because the first thing you think is, if that trigger gets pulled, I'm down, I'm going to die, especially where he's pointing the gun. And so what happened was um, all of a sudden I had a vision where I saw myself on the floor bleeding out. And I thought, wow, uh, this must be one of the pathways that this could go. And then I felt like, but I'm not supposed to leave now. I have a lot to offer. There's a lot that I want to do. There's a lot that I feel like it's almost like the feeling that you have a mission and to reach people and do what I'm doing with you right now. The long story short, I was able to diffuse the incredible amount of rage and anger that was in that situation. I actually backed away and I was able to grab some clothes and some belongings and pretty much just leave. I just walked out of it. So what I saw that could have happened didn't happen.
Did you diffuse the situation being bilocated, like being outside your body and inside your body at the same time, or did you just pop back into the body and walk away?
The vision of me seeing myself bleeding out uh, from a gunshot wound was over. So now I'm present again in my body. And I'm thinking I had that vision to see that if I continue to aggravate or agitate this individual, if I push the button, this is what could happen. So all I have to do is not push the button.
Do you feel like you changed the future?
I just think that we And again, I go back to this higher power, however that manifests to you, whether it's, I have Buddhist friends and Buddha is their person. For Christians, Jesus is their person. I have Hindu friends and they maybe have a modern day gurus or Krishna or, everybody around the world, the whole world is not Jesus centric. So at that time, Jesus was my go to person to cry out for help or anything like that. And so was God. And I always believed that I was talking to one of those two. I was talking to both of them at the same time. So I think that my higher power, again, was connecting me to an inner force of such intense love that it was that power of love that actually diffused the situation. Now, it has to work through you to do that. So whether you want to say, I did it or not, or the higher power did it or not, I really don't want to get into that. I just think what happened happened. I don't take any credit for it, personally, but I do know that it taught me one thing, that the power of love is greater than the love of power. And no matter who's in front of you or around you, if they're full of rage and anger, you can actually, if you're in your love place, if you're centered in that energy and that power, the truth is, I know now that nothing can touch you. It just can't happen. These, you see movies where guys are in the military. Even with Wonder Woman, although she was a superhero, she let her hair down and she walked out in the field, and there were gun bullets and missiles and everything firing all over the place, and these people don't get hit; they never get hurt. And I just think temporarily they're linked up with a very great loving power that will not allow us to uh, leave if it's not our time to.
What do you think is the best way to center yourself in that love?
I know now that I can only tell you what worked for me. I started meditating to the point where I could do 2 hours of meditation a day. And I really believe that when you're meditating, and I use the third eye or the Ajna chakra center, not the pineal gland, because the pineal gland is not the third eye. That's a misconception. Um, but ancient masters used to tell their students the pineal gland to give them an idea of where to center their attention. But you're basically locating and centering your attention here, right between the two eyes, and the third eye's right there. And I think if you practice something, even a sport, whatever a person practices, they become extraordinary at the more they practice. So you could say meditation is a practice. And what you're doing in that process is learning how to concentrate your attention in one place, the same place all the time. And just imagine if you can hold your attention right there long enough, you don't even think. You've actually stilled your mind. Your mind's like a ocean, and the ocean has waves in it. But by me focusing my attention right here and learning how to hold my attention still for an hour, there's no waves. There is no mind. It's the mind that causes the distraction. And believe it or not, the more distracted we are away from the center or the way away from source, the more apt we are open for disease. Because this ease is nothing but dis-ease. It's ease that has been infractured upon. So the greater and longer I can hold my attention in one place without any waves or ripples of thought and anger and rage, the more loving and peaceful I become. And then I start to have that effect on any and everybody and even animals that I come in contact with.
So you're saying that the third eye is the crown chakra?
Now that I've learned, now that I've been meditating for 50 years, I believe we have 6 chakra centers in the body. 5 of them are physical, where you can actually find a nerve ganglion or energy, like the solar plexus. They know now that there's actually a nerve ganglion right there. That's why a lot of sports guys, they get hit there real hard. A boxer, a wrestler, or you get hit if a baseball going 90 miles an hour hits you at that solar plexus, it's going to knock you out. And it's very, very painful because it hit a nerve center. So you can find 5 of them in the body, but you can't find one at the third eye because the third eye is not a physical thing. It's a spiritual app. It's a spiritual opening. So they're never going to be able to dissect someone and find the third eye. The 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 uh, the pituitary, the gland there that everybody talks about, that's an atrophied gland, but it's not the third eye because the third eye gives us access into the etheric and astral and the realms that go way beyond the astral is just the beginning. So to have access to the beyond, and when I say beyond, I mean beyond this physical realm. The way in and the way out is right here. It's always been that way.
I've interviewed a lot of near death experiencers, and a significant number leave their body before the trauma to it happens. For example, let's say somebody gets run over by a bus. They didn't feel being run over by the bus. They already left before. And so a thing that I find interesting about your second story is that you popped out before potentially being shot. Even though you weren't shot, but you still popped out before the possibility of it.
Sure. Yeah, that to me is the fear. The fear takes you out. It's almost like security. Uh, um, it's a mechanism that helps people survive whatever it is that they are experiencing. When you're out of the when we're out of the body, we don't feel the body. So one of the things that helps people survive is not feeling the pain. And people have stage 4 cancer and they're dying, but they leave their body and they don't feel a thing. So it's speculated that a lot of the times that Yeshua or Christ was on the cross, he had the same thing going on. He would, obviously was not there to feel a lot of what was going on. So that's a spiritual safety mechanism. It happens to everybody to help protect them from the pain.
After either one of your experiences, did you notice that you had any new abilities that you didn't have prior that could be considered psychic?
For me, the changes have come gradually over time. Not, I'm not going to accredit any one experience, but I am aware that a lot of people somehow they start to tap into their psychic powers and abilities. I remember when I was 7 years old, um, and I hadn't had any experiences, but I could sit on the floor and have an item in front of me like some kind of a toy or even a dollar bill, and I could make more of them. I could just multiply whatever was there. I could make 3 or 4 of them if I wanted to. I could make, everybody has these abilities. I think they're toys to play with, and then you can get caught up in these powers, and you can dissipate your energy too if you're not careful. So we're supposed to use our energy force to go up. Like a rocket takes off. We watch them take off all the time now. And you know that 90% of the lift of a rocket or a missile or whatever is just to get out of Earth's atmosphere. And that remaining 10% of the fuel can take them to the moon because there's no gravity to go against. So it's the same thing with going out of the body. There is an effort that has to be put there to learn how to do it on your own. I think when people have it accidentally, it's trying to tell you something. It's trying to say, hey, okay, you had one experience. Next year, when I ask you, give me the same one. And then 20 years later, you're still talking about the same one experience. Why not have one every day? Why not go up? I don't understand when I talk to my NDE friends. It's almost like they're stuck on their one, two, maybe four experiences. And I say, I have them all the time. Why wouldn't you like to have, because the one thing you hear, it's the same, the one thing that's uniform, that's the same with everybody that has the near-death experience, NOB. They talk about incredible peace. They also, oh, the love was just incredible. That I've never felt peace like that before in my life. I've never felt so much love than I felt when I had my experience. Okay, well, I'm thinking, okay, if that love and that peace was so great, why don't you want to have it again? Have it anytime you want to. Have it on a figure it out. Figure it out. And you know what? The people that have that experience every day, they start to radiate that energy out into the world. And these are the people that are these yogis or monks or whatever. They walk in a room and everybody's hair on their arm raises up. It's almost like a static electricity that they feel. So obviously, when we're meditating, we're feeding ourselves. We're becoming more of whatever you think you become. So if I'm meditating for 2 hours a day and I'm thinking about God, there's nothing left for me to become but God, to become more God-like, to become more Christ-like, to become more godly, and share that compassion and that peace and that love with everybody that I meet and come in contact with.
Well, you bring up a great question. Why do you think these NDEers are stuck?
You're not going to like this, but I think it has a lot to do with ego. I think it has a lot to do, we're all hungry for attention. And sadly, there are people that have both out of body experiences and near death experiences, and they exaggerate their stories. They exaggerate what happened. Now, I'm not saying everyone does this, and that's not what this is about. I'm saying that my need for attention, if I tell this story enough, people are going to listen, because people that are not having them, they're like, wow, that's really awesome, that's cool, tell me more. And then this person says, well, I've had 4 near death experiences, I can tell you about all 4 of them. And so there's this, the mind is an incredible entity. It's we're not the mind, and just like we're not the body, we're this incredible spiritual being that has a mind and a body, and we have to use the mind to think, and we have to use the body to get around here. But I would say number one, to answer your question, is the ego and the incredible um, need for nourishment and to be nourished and to be heard. People want people to listen to them. They want to be heard. Our current society worldwide is not set up to for people to listen to us. It's set up for everybody to talk. And I say we should always listen twice as much as we talk. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. But in our current age, we've gotten it backwards. Everybody wants to talk. Everybody wants to be heard. So I think between the need and desire and want to be heard and the need to feel loved and nourished, I have to share my story over and over and over and over again. And it happens to the point where, sadly, I'm not open to listen to anyone to tell me anything, anyone that wants to share. I'm not open to higher learning. I'm not open to becoming more conscious about what's really going on with this.
I think it's fascinating to think about separating consciousness from the mind because the way I see it, you can basically think from both of them. So maybe you can give me an example on how to do that.
Okay, well, my understanding that consciousness is what I am. So consciousness and love, believe it or not, are the same thing. But I can't touch either one of them with my hand. So how do I make them manifest so that a person can experience them? And believe it or not, quantum physicists have done a lot to explain what is really going on. They started discovering particles in the 40s, the atom, for example. And then every time they discovered something new, it was smaller. And I'll just talk about three things that they discovered. First of all, when they discovered the atom, they discovered that when they exploded it, it did two things. It gave off a vibration and it gave off light. Vibration is sound, and light. They discovered in 2012 what they called the God particle, and they called it a gluon. And so people said, well, what does it do? What is the characteristic of the gluon? And I said, well, it's the particle that holds everything together. That's pretty deep. But doesn't love do the same thing? See, so but how does love look? It manifests when they explode the gluon, it did the same thing, vibration and light. I can't remember when, but the tachyon was very interesting when they discovered it. Maybe 15 years ago, the tachyon was, they said, with little strings of vibrating light. They could actually show you pictures of these little teeny strings that were vibrating, and they were giving off light. And lastly, the anomalon so far is the smallest thing that quantum physicists has discovered. And they said it moves in accordance with the consciousness of its observer. So, in other words, if it's not observed, it has no life. But when we put attention on it, and attention and consciousness, same thing. Love, attention, consciousness, same thing, just three different words. So when our attention or our consciousness is placed on something, the anomalon, it moves. And again, it vibrated and it gives off light. What is the point? The point is everything is made of light and sound. Now, that doesn't mean it's made of physical light and sound. When people are having the near-death experiences and the OBEs, that's not physical light that they're experiencing. Their eyes are closed usually when they have the experience. They're supposed to be dead or near death. They're supposed to be either unconscious or in a superconscious state. So they're not having a physical experience. That light is is a much higher vibrating light. And that vibration or sound is there's no physical instruments on this planet that can measure the light frequencies and the sound frequencies of the higher realms. That can only be experienced by us joining in that consciousness. If I become astrally conscious, now I'm aware of these much higher vibrating sounds and frequencies and light. But everything is made up of it. Even the physical sound and light gets its life force from the inner light and sound. Everything comes from within. So that's consciousness. If I say, what is consciousness? What is love? They manifest for us to experience them in a frequency of sound or vibration and light. It's always been that way. The Masons knew that. They designed the back of the dollar bill. If you look on there, there's a pyramid. What does the pyramid represent? The human body. And if you look, there's a light. There's one eye, not two, at the top of the pyramid. And if you look at that dollar bill and that picture on the back, The light is not coming out. I mean, the light is not going in. When you and I look at something, the light goes into our retina, into our brain, and we interpret it as a color or whatever. But that light on on that single eye at the top of the pyramid, the light's radiating out. You can see it. So the Masons were aware of exactly what I'm sharing with you, and they just put it on the back of the dollar bill for us to try to figure it out, try to help us get there.
So when you are having an OBE, you're still thinking though, or are you in that
No,
experience? You don't think at all. You're just like experiencing love.
yeah, it's just like watching a movie. Now, if I want to start to begin to say, okay, I saw this tree, I experienced this huge dinosaur that was, creature, and or that I went up into the clouds. I have to find the words somehow to describe my experience. But for most people, when they're having the experience, they're in an observation mode. And quantum physicists, when they discover these smaller and smaller particles, what are they doing? They're observing. Remember, the anomalon, the smallest particle so far, it moves in accordance with the observation, with the consciousness of its observer. Otherwise, it has no life. So it's consciousness of the observer that actually gives life and motion to that particle.
Many
Mhm.
experiencers claim that on the other side, they have some sort of conversation with some being
Mhm.
about whether they want to come back or not. So when that is happening, are they still in observation mode? I wouldn't think so because there's a conversation going on.
Right. And so if you're having a conversation, that's different. But immediately we think of conversation through the mouth and through what you can only interpret based on what you know. So that's where people that haven't had these experiences, they're a little bit limited. The people that have had them or that have had more of them, the people that have had four experiences, for example, have had more exposure than the person that's had one. So yeah, you're having a conversation. It might look like you're having lip to lip conversation, but you know, most of that is through some form of telepathy.
Right, I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah, I guess my point was that when you're on the other side, you're not necessarily only in observational mode.
no, not no. But that's the way most of it goes. Obviously, you have to be thinking to talk. You have to have some thought going on, and uh, the mind is a separate entity, but it's an entity that we use. And what does the mind do? It creates thought. So the only way for me to interpret what's happening to me is to use the mind. But I'm just saying, most of the part of the experience, if I'm whatever my experience is, that's beyond body and mind. That's actually being experienced on the level of soul, and the soul is what we are. You've heard the saying that we're not physical beings here trying to have the spiritual experience. We're actually spiritual beings here to have the human experience. So if I said, people ask me all the time and say, what are you? Because I go past who we are. They say, what? There's a big difference. What I am is a spiritual being, a spiritual entity. I'm made of love. I vibrate light and sound, light and vibration. That's what I am. Now I have to use them. I have to use the mind to help me put this into thought process. The only way for me to interpret my experience is to put thought to it. And then while I'm down here on this physical realm, I have to be in a body. Just like you have to get a car or a plane or a train to go wherever it is that you're going, you have to have a physical body to get around here. That's what we do. So we're basically three aspects. We have a body, we have a mind, but we are soul.
What I think about sometimes is when you're in the body, you're thinking through the mind, or that's assisting you. But sometimes when you're outside of the body, you can still be thinking without the mind. And so
No, you only think with the mind. So that means you take the mind with you.
oh,
When
so
we die,
you take the mind with you. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have three bodies. In the Eastern philosophy, which I accept, and it makes a lot of sense. And when you start having some of this experience, you can't deny or ignore your experience. But they basically start out with us having three bodies. We have a physical body, an astral body. Now, most NDEers and OBEers are familiar with the term astral body or astral. But we also have a third one. It's a causal, CAUSAL body. The physical body is our body of the five senses. Okay, so we have five organs: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and touch. And the senses that sight, vision, hearing, taste, and touch. That's the physical body, and that's the limit that the physical body can do. It can't do anything beyond that. The physical body can't. That's what it's here to do. We experience this world through the five senses. Um, the Some of the teachers that I follow, they say pretty much 83% of our experiencing this world is through vision, and 14% through hearing. And I find that interesting because we were talking about what? Light and sound. You hear sound, see light. Now, believe it or not, that makes sense down here. But as you ascend into the astral realm and higher, now all of a sudden you start to see sound and hear light. See the brain, that's cognitive dissonance because your brain gets to say, you just said something the opposite of what I've been taught all my life. But we only can know what we know, and we can only make sense of wherever we are in the level of consciousness that we are. The astral body is the body of desires. The emotional body, I call it in my workshops, I call it the emotional body. Eckhart Tolle, who wrote the book The Power of Now, he calls it the pain body. It's all the same thing. Pain, emotions, desires, it's all relevant. Okay. Now the third realm is the mental realm. That's the realm of thought. Notice that each thing I say as we ascend vibrates much faster. The astral body vibrates and much faster than the physical because it's not so dense. It doesn't have all this density. Therefore, it can vibrate faster and at a higher frequency. So that's our emotions. We feel angry, we feel hatred, we feel chaos to be violent, we feel love, we feel compassion. These are emotional responses to these particular frequencies. Okay, now if we nurture those frequencies, then we become them. Then you have the realm of thought. Our causal body, our third body, goes up and vibrates even higher because it's no longer with emotions, it just thinks. And you have some people that they're very great thinkers. And when you observe them, you say, they seem to be a little stoic. He just doesn't feel as much as I do. She seems to be, they make very good military people because they're great thinkers, but they don't feel. And in relationships, we have issues with this. If I'm a guy that I was raised by my mom to feel a lot, and I end up with a woman that is a thinker but not a feeler, it's a little difficult to relate. Now, when you leave the physical body with the senses and you leave and you ascend beyond the astral emotions and you ascend beyond the mind, which is the brain is the organ, the physical organ of thought, but the mind is where our thought processes come from. Then there's what is left when we don't have any of those. That's what we are. That consciousness, that drop of consciousness, now that's bereft of the veils. The physical veil doesn't have anyone. This doesn't have the emotional body. There's no causal body or thinking there. There's just this, to picture it, call it a golf ball of light. Then you imagine squeezing 16 suns of light to this little ball. That's what we are. And so somebody says, well, what is that? And you say, well, that's consciousness. You are a conscious entity within the mind, within emotions, and within the body. And now, to be human, you have to have all of those. To function on this earth realm, we have to have all three together. But when we meditate or have an NDE, we go beyond that. And then people that meditate enough, they start to ascend even higher and higher and higher.
A significant number of experiencers either see what people would call aliens on the other side, and or they start seeing them after their experience. Have you ever seen what people would call ETs?
Oh, sure. I remember when I was just starting to meditate, maybe 2 years into my learning to meditate, I saw what would some people call the 9-footers. And it was so exciting to go into meditation to see these beings. I mean, I couldn't put a yardstick and measure them, but they definitely, I would say, my observation was they were 9 feet tall, male and female. Okay, to um, to see a species of that has very large eyes. Um, I'm sure people would call that alien. Um, I I remember having, you talked about after the experience was over. There were, when I was very young, I used to see these things that looked like monkeys, but they had tails. Their ears were a little bit pointed, and they had their eye color was red. I understand now what I was experiencing, and these creatures were not physical, but with my eyes open, I could see them. And you know what they would do? They'd chase me. They would actually come after me. And then one day I figured out that they weren't real, that they weren't physical. They were real, but they weren't physical. So I didn't really have to worry about them anymore. So they were drawn to fear. And as I became fearless, they stopped coming around more. They stopped coming after me. They were no longer attracted to me because I didn't supply them with the fear that they needed to live. And so now I've answered your question. I've seen them right here with open eyes, and I've also had the experience. Now, are they aliens? I'm going to share a thought with you. One that's going to draw incredible criticism, but it's going to also jar people with an incredible amount of cognitive dissonance. I don't believe in them, and I don't think they're aliens, but I will tell you what they are. If you read the Vedas, they say there are 400,000 species of inner beings. 400,000 species of different beings that live on the astral and the causal realms. So when people have an NDE, when people have an OBE, and they encounter any of these beings, if they don't know anymore, then they have to interpret their experience as, I just experienced an alien. Now, what happens is sometimes they have their eyes open when this happens. Sometimes they have more than one of these entities around. The beings on the astral world, they can't cry tears because they don't have a physical body. So they're very curious about tears and why we cry. So you know what? Maybe they want to dissect us. So they take us up in a ball of light. Okay, this ball of light now is a flying saucer, and they took me up in the flying saucer, and now they have me on a table and they're dissecting me. You just had an experience, and your brain can only, like I said, remember earlier, I said you can only interpret your experiences based on the level of consciousness that you have, based on the level of experience with all this that you've had. So you grow up watching Star Trek like I did. You interpret everything based on Star Trek, and you have to believe that out of those millions and millions of planets and stars out there, there has to be some more of us. And what I'm sharing with you, that we are so uniquely created, we have a certain vibration, a certain frequency that vibrates through this entire physical universe. Now, how far does that go? Nobody knows how far it goes. But the bottom line is we have this whole thing to ourselves, and the center of it is the planet that we live on and how we interact with one another. So I gave you some very good examples about the little monkey species of creatures but they feed on what? Fear. Some feed on hatred. Some feed on different negative forces, and then you have loving beings that feed on more positive light energies. So some people are going to say the good ones and the ones that are full of light are angels, and some people are going to say those with red eyes and pointed ears and they're vampire-like, or maybe they're demons. They're just different species or different life forms, but they're all on a higher frequency, on a higher vibration. They have their own world. They have their own universe, as a matter of fact, and we have ours.
Do you think the astral is all around us, but just at a frequency that we can't see it?
Absolutely. I mean, people see things all the time. You can, look, you want to get the introduction into the astral world. Go out sometime and look up in the sky when some people do it on the beach. You find a nice quiet place, and you just look up in the sky, and you'll see these little tiny motes start to move around. You could probably sit in a room as long as you have a white wall or something to look at, and you start to see particles. And when I was very young, I used to reach out and take my hand and try to touch them, and they'd be gone, but you could still see them. So the atmosphere is filled with astral and etheric entities and beings, and things that what we would call insects that they're vibrating and humming and moving all around. They're all around us, but the average person doesn't see them. So it really doesn't matter if you don't see them, but they're there. And if they're there, so are other entities, so are other beings. So somebody's going to see something like that, especially if their eyes are open. You can have your two physical eyes open and your third eye is open at the same time. So now all of a sudden you're vibrating higher and you're having an experience, and you see an entity in front of you that's blue or green or gray. They call them the grays. They're the blues. Everything is there. But if you're limited in your understanding and your consciousness about what your experience is, you can only interpret your experience. Your mind can only interpret it based on what you know and based on the amount of consciousness about all of this that you personally have had.
Do you believe in reincarnation? And if so, why do we keep coming over and over again?
Well, you've heard this before. The earth realm pretty much is a school, and we're here to learn. People think a lot of things, but the main thing that we're here to learn is how to love. And believe it or not, we were put here so we can go back home, because this earth is not our home. We're visiting here. We're here for a temporary 100 years, 50, 75 years. Some people are making it to 120, 125. But when that last breath is up, brother, we're gone. So while we're here, we're supposed to learn about love. And I was reading, I have this quote that I got from someone a long time ago. And basically they say, practice love until you become love. And that in itself would be a realization. The way to truly realize what you are is to go inside and leave this physical realm so that you can experience yourself as love, experience yourself as the soul, because the soul is love. That's what we are. But I said it manifests in two different energies, vibration and light. When you see some of these beings, you even see when you go in and see your deceased beings, family members, a lot of times they're vibrating this pure light. And all of a sudden the cancer that grandmom had, she doesn't have anymore. You see her, instead of looking 83, she looks 40. You know, I saw my father the day after, the morning after he left, and he was in white. He was radiating. This is the beauty of love and light. I couldn't believe it. I was excited, and he looked like he was 35, 40 years old. So the physical age thing doesn't apply in the higher realm. They don't have a physical body anymore. This is why it's such a beautiful thing, actually, for some people to leave if they come down with cancer and things that are very painful. Um, it's sad, the people that have Alzheimer's and dementia, they're having experiences, but they can't even, by the time they tell somebody, they can't remember to tell you anything. My mom has it now. I'm sure she's having some experiences, but she can't remember them. And her mind is no longer able to even try to put that into words. But like I said, in the Vedas, which were recorded in previous ages, the ages before this one, where we weren't even where we were nothing like we are now. We lived longer. We were much more conscious. They say there are 400,000 species of life forms on the inner realms. So that's crazy.
Well, Don, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yeah, but there's only one way to reach me right now. I don't have a website. I haven't had one in a while. I did write a book. But everybody reaches me now how you did. We were on Facebook Messenger. So they
What's
can find me there and talk all we want to. Um, and I just wanted to say that we reincarnate until we get it right. We reincarnate till we learn about love, till we learn about peace. And we are, each lifetime gets better because of what happens to us. We're to learn from our experiences no matter what they are. But there's a shortcut. And the shortcut is meditation, meditating at the third eye center, and practicing how to become more compassionate, loving beings.
well, what's the title of your book, and is it still available?
It's sold out, but I can still give you the title. The title was Higher Consciousness Through Meditation.
Maybe it's still out there where somebody can get it at a used bookstore.
It was for a while. It's gotten harder and harder because it sold out, believe it or not, in 2015. And so the thing for me to do is to hurry up and write another one or have them do a revision of the original. But I have people that used to, 2 years ago, they'd say, I found it. Or I think maybe even last year someone found it. And, it's ridiculous to pay $50 or $100 or more. And somebody in Canada said, "Oh, I saw your book. They wanted Amazon or it was on eBay $300." I said, "Well, don't get it. Just chill out and see. I'll see what we can do." So I'm just saying. Now we're 2024. Another year has gone by. It's just. I'm not saying that you won't find it, but if you do, it'd probably be very expensive. But I think if eBay doesn't have it and Amazon, you're not gonna find it.
Well, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yes, and believe it or not, we've already said it maybe a couple of times. I think we are here to practice love until we come to the realization that we are love. Nothing on the planet's going to change. We can't change anyone but ourselves. So if you want to change the world, if you want to help change the world, we should practice meditation as much as possible because that's how you directly raise vibration. If we're serious about raising vibration and frequency, it's not going to be on anything we've read. No books, no, there's nothing out here. No packages, no classes, no workshops. That's not how it's done. It's done through concentration, concentrating myself. And as I become more concentrated, what I am starts to manifest itself, and that's love. That's the only cure. The more I change myself, the more I change the world around me.
Don, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
It was an honor to be here with you today. I thank you so much, and I'm going to pre-thank you to all of your viewers that might see the video today.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.